Hello, and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right. Well, welcome to another Cloud Podcast. It's Friday. We love the Friday podcast. Today, we've got a special guest. I'm excited to introduce Graham Gill. He's the Vice President of Customer Success and Service over at Maestro. Graham, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Guys, very happy to be here. Looking forward to this. I know we've been trying to get this on the books for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a while sometimes. And then Artie,
Yeah.
good to see you, my co-host, partner in crime, as always.
Alex, nice to see you again. And Graham, nice to see you again as well. We've run in the same circles for the last, 2 or 3 months now. So glad to have you on. And I guess I'll start it off. Graham, Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your background is and what you guys do at your current company and in your current role.
Yeah, sure. So I'd say if you've ever found anyone that sits kind of in the business and technical worlds, that's me. I've had a long history of building teams on both sales, pre-sales, post-sales, technical teams. Really enjoy the customer success and experience part of it. And that's really where my journey has taken me the last 10 years. Currently, I work for Maestro. We're an interactive video platform. So think of some of the largest brands in the world are building and running some of their live shows on our platform. I own everything post-sales. So if you think about customer success, you think about some service offerings as well as support. That really follows under my control.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, building teams, right? That's never an easy thing to do. Talk a little bit about your path and your growth and learning how to do that and your methodology and framework around building teams out.
Yeah, it's great. I love building teams. In my real world, I also build hockey teams. I have a passion for trying to figure out like how do we put pieces together to get like that cliche of going deeper into the playoffs if you're a football fan. So it's something that I volunteered for many years ago. I didn't know how to go through the hiring process. I always thought it was like, hey, HR kind of just put folks in front of you and then all of a sudden they became part of a team. So I really, I had to learn how to talk to people. I had to learn how to hire. I had to learn how to kind of move parts around, right? Sometimes you inherit a team. Sometimes you build a team from scratch. I've been fortunate enough and lucky enough to do it both ways. I love to build from scratch, but I also love understanding that, hey, if you're inheriting a team, there's someone there that, they might not be the best fit for that role, but they're really good for the organization. So how do we figure out how to move them around so that we're getting the most out of it? And that's taken a lot of time, trials and tribulations. Some of it's been successful. Most of it's been successful. At other times, it's been a little bit of a challenge, right? My first team I ever built was actually a product team. So assembling other folks to help build a product. And we thought we were building, I've told this story already. I think you and I talked about this early on when we first met. I thought I was building a really kick-ass product. Turns out it wasn't as cool as I thought. But bringing those other folks into the organization and helping expand my thought process showed me like where we were missing. And ultimately we turned it around.
Yeah, and your product, your company, obviously was drastically affected by the pandemic in I would say a positive way. Lots of people putting more content online, doing virtual concerts, people on the end user side adopting that new kind of framework and technology. So tell us a little bit about how the post-pandemic has changed not only your business model, but your post-sales support team as well, because I'm assuming the majority of them are still working from home or not necessarily going into the office. So talk to us a little bit about how the pandemic changed your team and from a people standpoint, and then also how it changed your organization.
Yeah, sure. I think let me answer the organization first, right? So Maestro was established before the pandemic happened, and we had some of the largest brands in the world, Apple, Pandora, XM, that were using our platform. I think with the heightened sense of like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to go back out on the road. We're not going to be able to fill stadiums. We rode the wave as many organizations. Our competitors hop in. You look at Peloton and all these organizations that just kind of popped up. So there's this explosive growth. At the same time, as we're adding new folks into the organization, we were 100% remote at that point. So I actually was hiring folks, again, that I've never met in person. It was all through Zoom. And I think everyone was really trying to figure out, like, how do you go about that, right? Support folks heads down, want to just get through tickets. How do you bring them out of their shell and have them participate as part of a company? So it was a little bit of a challenge. I think we did a really good job, as a lot of folks in the industry did, to really recruit solid people, as well as to get them to become part of this like cohesive team, right? Because you're not sitting down, you're not whiteboarding, you're not having those stand-up sessions in person. Now, on the flip side, as the pandemic wore on, especially in the events business, I think we got a little bit of a fatigue, right? So where everyone was really excited to divert their attention away from the pandemic and sit down and watch shows, I think folks started to pack more and more into their lives. And therefore, the sitting down for 2 hours, 3 hours and watching a show, you can only do that so many times. So I think as artists started to adjust, we as a company needed to adjust, right? Because the events are secular, right? Pick the largest rock band or pop star in the world. They're not going to do the virtual thing every night as if they would go from tour to show to show in person. But so it was very secular. So how do you build a business around sort of a secular motion? And you feel that with the creators, right? Like folks like all of us sitting down, talking, communicating, doing podcasts, putting information out, right? So there's a whole secondary market that kind of came out of this pandemic. That's not just the big shows.
Yeah, that's interesting. I imagine, just managing through that as well, right? With your teams. Obviously, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Is, when the pandemic, was first wearing on, and the adjustments everyone had to make. And I think now it's, it created some new frameworks around how to hire, right? How to manage. But now that we're pretty much coming out of it and we're seeing people going back to the office, some people just having like a hybrid environment. What do you see, Maestro doing as far as, staying at home, working hybrid? Is it open to the employee?
Yeah, we're always going to, well, shouldn't say always. At this current time, we're going to stay virtual. I think we figured out how to do it relatively successfully. You think about the overhead of an office. We've really expanded our hiring. So I was, I think, the third East Coast person that was hired, and now we have 25% of the company is East Coast based. We have some folks in Texas, right? So for an organization that's built out of Los Angeles, it's allowed us to kind of, like many other companies, explore a deeper talent pool. And I think that's the way it's going to, in our organization, remain. The concept of hybrid, I think is a wonderful one. You see a lot of organizations kind of offering that because I think they're afraid to rock the boat. People have become very comfortable working at home. Not everyone's efficient, right? So there is going to be sort of, an organizational by organizational approach to it. I am starting to see, I was talking with a colleague about this earlier this week, where all final interviews are done in person. So they find a regional hub, they either find office space, and they, for certain level roles, VP level roles, heavy director level roles, still they're starting to bring that final round in person, which I think is a wonderful idea, right? It really kind of, for both the candidate and for the hiring manager and organization, it allows you to kind of get that face-to-face connection back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and we talk a little bit about technology. So we talked a little bit about the people side, and there's obviously a process side, but I want to talk a little bit about technology. And Graham, you and I have been on calls a little bit earlier with suppliers and vendors, and we don't have to go through who's suppliers or what, but we did talk a little bit about the frustrations on the customer side of the sales cycle. Because you've got these sales reps or account executives that are trying to sell you some sort of product, and it's a legitimate product that can solve a business need. But the sales rep or account executive, they've got a quota they have to hit for the quarter. They've got, deadlines. They got to change it in their Salesforce, like, it's a hot lead or stage 1, stage 4, whatever the tools are there, and they're trying to push you along to purchase. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Let's talk a little bit about how you guys take that approach, and you personally, what are the things you like and dislike about that process? And maybe we can educate some of the account executives that are listening here on how to do it right versus how not to do it wrong.
Yeah, again, I can only speak for my opinion. I've been a little bit frustrated with sales cycles on the customer side recently, and I think it's interesting when you sit in the role that I sit in, and I don't mean it to sound the way it's going to, but
Right.
a lot of people are targeting customer success leaders right now. It's a hot role, it's a hot market, it's an intersection, it's part of the revenue triangle of sales, marketing, and customer success. So
Mhm.
you're getting constantly pitched. It's also, as we just talked about, we're in a virtual world. It's not going to go away, but we still have to learn how to do business. So there's a lot of tool sets that are popping up in the last 18 months that are directed at customer success leaders. And I love to check them out. I want the latest and greatest. I don't want to just invest all in tools, but I have tried to take quite a few demos because I kind of understand the concept, and I really, am genuinely interested in these tools and how they can help me in my organization. The
Mhm.
frustration is, I'd have to say that it's been a lot of roadblocks, a lot of, telling me what my problem is, telling me what the industry problem is, and trying to nurture me along, which I fully understand having built a sales team before. But when time is money, to use the old cliche, I feel like it's being my decision making is being slowed down, and it's actually pushing me away. So for instance, I was on, and I won't name vendors on this, but they have a product. I understand what it does. I have some questions about the validity of some of their machine learning. So I wanted to get on. Let's click around. I personally am a very visual person. Let's just jump into it. Let's banter some questions back and forth, and let's see if it makes sense to continue the conversation. Um, it's now going on 3 meetings, and I'm kind of playing this game now because I'm kind of interested in, like, do I actually get to see the tool? By the way, I'll probably purchase another tool by the time I get to that third meeting. But I'm, it started with, let me tell you about what your problem is. I'm fairly aware of what my problem is. It was showing slide decks. It was walking me through the very basics. And I tried to politely suggest, hey, let's move forward and kind of get to the tool. Second one, brought in a more senior salesperson, again, asking me about my pain points. I understand we're going through the qualification process, but when there's so many vendors out there, it's almost like, could we just get to it? And
Right.
that's not been an exception. It's been the norm in the past 2.5 months for me.
Yeah, it seems like it's been moving in that direction for years, and I think the book was Predictable Revenue. Was it a guy out of Salesforce world years ago that created this model of the SDR, the AE, and like passing it through? And I think they've gotten so siloed in that process. Like you said, if you talk to the senior executive at the beginning, and they can do a good salesperson can do the discovery during the demo, asking questions along the way. But as a buyer, you just want to see the platform. You'll have ideas in your head of how it can help your company, and that's where they can figure it out. But I think the process becomes, they try to scale. It's death by scaling, right? They're trying to scale the whole system, and it's ruining the customer experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. The scaling aspect and death by scaling. I'm going to steal that from you. But I was telling you guys before we started recording of a real, again, a little bit of a different variation of it this morning. Sitting down for breakfast, reminded myself that I help other startups, and I had to look at 3 tools. So I'm like, let me go and try to get a demo, see what's out there, try to understand about their product. Um, 2 of the 3, I was able to successfully get a meeting on the calendar. One of those 2 actually made me go through like a 15-step form, a type form, which I thought was a little. I was so far in, I'm like, might as well do it. The third one, I haven't heard from in 8 hours. Now those other 2 are on my calendar. The third one, we're going into a Friday. Maybe they'll reach out Monday. But it still seems like there's a barrier. I had a period of time. I wanted to learn. I'm okay with pushing the meeting out so that we can, the reps can do their this discovery, but at least let's get it on the calendar. So one of those companies, I don't know if I'll ever get to it, and they probably were the one that I was most interested in. So it's just a little bit of a variation of, me reaching out. So you think about the whether it's a BDR reaching out or an inbound marketing lead, friction on both sides as the client.
Yeah. And I've been a fly on the wall on a lot of these meetings where it's between a customer and an account executive, and the ones where I see success are where the account executives get out of the way of the sale. The customer has credit card in hand, extremely eager. They just have maybe 4 questions or 10 questions to ask verbally, and they want to see it. They don't want to verbally hear the answer. They want to hear the answer and see the answer in front of them. And if they just get to that point and, put all the pride aside and put all the, sales quota, and I also have to, check all the boxes and make sure that you talk to the solutions architect. They just get out of their own way. I see them being successful. The more the barriers they put in front of themselves, the harder it is for the customer to actually see value, because the value in the product's there. It's just the value in the relationship that's not there. So yeah, that's very interesting.
So Artie, let me, if you don't mind me asking a question here, am I wrong in asking from the beginning to, like, let's get into the tool? Is that out of left field to ask something like that?
No, I would say that's the first thing you should say. And there are some customers that are timid and they won't say that right off the bat, and they'll get dragged along through the sales cycle, and they'll be, to your point, 4 or 5 meetings before they actually get the meat on the bones. And but yeah, I agree. I think it should be right up front. Yeah, I know what your product can solve. I'm the subject matter expert as the customer of what my problem is. So show me how you think you could solve that problem, and as quickly as you can without having to go through the steps. So I think it's the right approach. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, I actually had a question for both of you too, because you both have purchased a lot of SaaS platforms for the contact center world. And really it's like, what I have found of all the demos that I've been on and seen, because we're doing this for our clients, and you just want to get to the meat of it, like you're saying, but they want to go through the company history, where they came from and all of that. Like how important is that for the two of you on the buying side?
0. Sorry to cut you off. 0. I don't care about it, right? And I don't mean to sound like a maniac when I say that. I can understand. I usually research, like, companies, right? Like, hey, who are they working with? How long have they been around? Who are their founders? Who are they getting funding from, right? Like, that's the level of detail I usually do 99.9% of the time before I reach out to vendors, unless it's just a quick sign up. I'm like, it's not worth it. So to hear the company, when they were founded, that so-and-so partner with so-and-so, I want to get to the tool. I'm a very visual. I still play with Legos, right? Like, I love to touch and feel things and see and understand. So let's jump right into it. But I always feel that I'm being disrespectful, and I have this, like, I freeze up. I'm like, I want to say, like, let's go, but I don't want to, like, jump across, because I understand that some sales manager or leader is training these folks, these reps, to go through this, to qualify, to pass them along. But think about the amount of time they're wasting on both sides by just not jumping into it.
Yeah, it's a good point. As a sales leader, and we consult, they always say 80% of the buying is done before you even see the demo, because you're doing the evaluation yourself. So you're not going to waste your hour of time just without first looking up that company to see, like, what they're all about. So if you're already doing that on the front end, they can really just jump right into it. And then I like to, when we do our demos for our clients, is, we'll say, like, where do you want to see, right? Like, what you want to go here, here, or here. And the good sales reps that we work with and the SEs that we work with will be able to do that. And then just ask the questions along the way.
Think about product-led growth, right? PLG, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The hockey stick growth, the trajectory that some of these companies are getting because they let people get in there. They let them tinker. They let them see and feel and even integrate with, quickly with other tools that are in their stack. So it's almost removing that barrier and letting me come to my own conclusion. And then if I still have questions, they're right there to kind of nurture me along. I love that. I think it's refreshing to actually jump in, see a tool, not have it be gated, come up with my list of questions. And I've actually reached out to folks because of that. Like I get it now, but I'm just missing, this particular like concept. What are you folks trying to do? Oh, okay. And then we're even further along than just showing me a PowerPoint.
Yeah, totally agree. And also, it depends on what tool or what business outcome you're looking for. Because some things, let's say like a chatbot or a speech analytics tool, it's very oversaturated. You've got so many vendors in that space. Chatbot, for example, there's like 40 plus just well-known ones, and there's probably another 40 or 50 that are lesser known. So you don't need to be educated when you talk to a vendor who sells a chatbot what a chatbot does. You know what a chatbot does. You know their funding. You know their website. You've looked at them on Gartner Magic Quadrant or whatever you've done on the research side. You want to know what makes them different and how it's going to solve your business problem better than a competitor of theirs. Those are the things you got to get into. And if it takes 4 meetings to get there, that's just way too long. There's 40 other people who want your business standing in line to take your business. So it's got to be quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the questions that I have, when it comes to like, evaluating in the beginning stages for the both of you really, and Artie or Gil, you guys, Graham, you can take it. Either one of you is, how important is Gartner? How important are these other review sites? Like what holds the most weight when looking at a certain solution?
I'll start first. Graham, you may agree or disagree or might have a different approach. My opinion is Gartner Magic Quadrant, your G2 Crowd, your Capterra, all these types of tools. That's good to do some research and kind of narrow your list down. But once you get it down to about 4 or 5 vendors, it's actually better to go word of mouth. So who are people that in the industry who have done it? Who are your peers that you met at conferences or you're part of community groups in the customer experience world, and ask them questions like, hey, have you ever heard of whatever, Thinkful or Quick or whatever it is?
Right.
And what do you think? And would you ever buy them, or do you use them today, or do you use a competitor of theirs? That's where I would normally start. Then I would reach out to the company and say, hey, I'm interested in taking a demo. Graham, what are your thoughts? What's your approach?
I actually agree, right? And I've no disrespect to Gartner or any of the other ones. A lot of those are, pay to play, to be involved, to get on there. And I've, from an investment perspective, I've been in that position, right, where we're looking to try to get on there. And you kind of see all the tools grouped together. I agree with you 100%. I found most of the tools in my stack from peers. And not even customer success, right? Some are services, some from a phone perspective, and it's really let my peers who have maybe made the mistake or got the luck of finding a diamond in the rough before me, and that's really that holds the weight with me. G2 and all these other sites, they're directionally correct, but right, I mean, how many CSMs do we know that where we incentivize? Let's get our G2 crowd up. Let's, get on, our ratings up on X, Y, or Z site. So the word of mouth is super important, and also finding folks like yourself, right, who deal with a lot of this, day in and day out. Like you understand where all these vendors are coming from. You're not putting vendors in front of folks that are, not heavily vetted, and so that's probably the secondary thing I look at before I even go to Gartner. I got to say those type of quadrants or whatever you want to call them are probably the last thing I look at.
Interesting. Yeah, and with the space that we're in now, with how fast technology is moving, I think if you only look at Gartner, I mean, like you said, it takes a long time to get on there. It's expensive to get on there. There's some great tools that they're too new to have the track record yet to get on there, but they might be better than what's even on the quadrant.
Right. I mean, I think, look at the past 20, what are we, 22 months, wherever we are now in this pandemic thing. There's tools that were not even thought about that are
Right.
now in everyone's hands and are killing it, right?
Mhm.
So yes, the long process of getting onto a report or to get in front of an analyst, well, I fully respect that. That's only sort of the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other, tier two, tier three players that are up and coming that are, going to surpass at some point. Um,
So
Yeah,
we're diving down this path of evaluating product, and Artie and I are actually coming up in a couple weeks going to a conference. What weight do the conferences have for you, and how important are they in your just market knowledge and evaluation process as you're going to those?
so I haven't been to one in a long time, obviously with what's going on. I used to love going to conferences. That's where you find out new and exciting tools. You get to see your peers. You get to, kind of uh, really get hands on. I don't know if I'm actually going to even plan on anything for this year, for a conference or even, an exhibit. They used to be very important. I think now, if we can get past sort of the sales cycle, I think that hands-on, touchy-feely, understand the tool, cool. Let me keep it in mind. I think that can be done very well virtually. But
Mhm.
I do miss some of those things where you get to go and talk with others in the industry.
I think that goes back to the word of mouth, right? As you're
Yep.
meeting, it's a good place to talk with your peers without it being a LinkedIn group, private group, or something like that, where you can sit down and say, "Oh yeah, I've used these guys. I've used Quick. I've used In Contact, or whoever it is," and then they can talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, because they all have their bruises and they all have their shining star moments as well.
If you guys don't mind, what conference you guys going to?
It's
yeah, it's
the Call and
called
Contact
called
Center
Contact.
one
Okay,
in Vegas.
cool.
Yeah, it's the first one. It's actually an EU organization that's done this in the EU multiple times, and they're bringing it to the US for the first time. And they're trying to do it in a different fashion where there's not really breakout rooms or keynote speakers per se. Instead, everything's done on the trade show floor and it's spread out even more. So
Mhm.
you got, instead of the line of booths, you're gonna have booth, open area, and then
That's
in
kind of cool.
between the open areas is where people step up and speak, and people can kind of come in and leave whenever they want, wherever they feel comfortable with. So definitely an interesting setup.
Yeah, I'll tell you, since you kind of opened the door for that. We talk about Maestro, we talk about Hub, and we talk about a couple of these other virtual events, organizations. I tried to actually do a couple of the conferences virtually. I tried to do Salesforce. I tried to do a couple other big ones, and it was just I couldn't. My mind wasn't drawn in like I would be if I was in person. I do think that folks have gotten better at it and kind of have figured out like it's not a one-to-one replication, right? Because when this first popped up, everyone should just try to replicate the in-person conference, and it's like, well, that doesn't make sense when I'm standing at my desk or sitting at my desk. So that they've fine-tuned it and it's gotten a lot better. But I do think that there's something to be said about those type of things in person, right? Where you can, especially software is one thing, but even consumer goods, right? Like that's something that's you
Mhm.
can't do that virtually, right? You want to touch, you want to feel, you want to look, you want to open doors. Anything hardware related obviously does not translate well to the virtual world.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask too,
Yeah.
because I've seen a lot of the virtual events. I host some virtual events, virtual wine tasting where we do a product supplier highlight, or webinars where, and I don't do these, but they entice you with like DoorDash gift cards so you get
Mhm.
lunch while you're, stuff like that. But every time I go to those, I feel like it's 45 minutes of slideware, and you can see people's cameras. They're like writing emails, like doing stuff, eating lunch. They're not really engaged.
Tuning
Maybe
out.
one out of every 20 people's engaged
Yeah.
with the conversation. So I don't know if I like them, but Graham, what are your thoughts? Do you think some iteration of that will change in the future so we can still do the digest of the information
I, I
virtually?
do. I do think it will, and that's what I talk about the refinement, right? If you look 20
Mhm.
months ago to where we are now, I think it's gotten a lot better. It's held some of them have held my attention. Truthfully, early on when those things popped up, I would reward folks on the team with that, right? Like if they're going to get free lunch, here you go. And so you probably didn't have the right participant from an organization, because I have ham sandwiches upstairs. Maybe someone else doesn't, right? So I think a lot of that happened in the industry where folks kind of just passed it along as a gesture to kind of bridge the gap. I do think that there are some really good online events like you talked about, and I think we can continue to improve that over time. But yeah, there is just something about certain industries that sort of begs the in-person, face to face.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've done too that hopefully, can move the needle. And like Artie said, you can do gift cards or, the Grub Hubs is, making it interactive, limiting it to a certain size and just showing the platform, just like you were saying earlier, where it's like, I just want to see it. Like you'll know what questions to ask if there's questions, but you'll know if it fits just by watching someone go through it. And then, hey, try this or try this. And, it's a way to not get stuck in a sales cycle but still evaluate the solution.
Yeah, one of the things that I've often, and I accidentally got into this situation, it turned into a sales pitch, but it was a very small group, and we could actually ask questions. And these were my peers that I had never met before, and it ended up being like five of us and a vendor. And we were like, let's see this. And it was really interesting to hear the other four or five, I can't remember the exact number of folks that were in the room, but we were able to kind of like help each other through it. So it took that, like, let me see it, the sales pitch. And this sales rep was actually able to sit back with the people that he was trying to sell to, actually debating the product and like, oh, is this how you look at it? Oh, is it solving this problem? If that could be replicated somehow, right, where the salesperson is almost a facilitator, I wonder how that would play out like over time. Because I actually got a lot out of it. I didn't end up selecting this vendor, but I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes, and it was interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me in the virtual world.
Yeah, and I think that adds more value to you, right? And just like you were talking about earlier, how you're this morning looking at these other vendors, one person never gets back to you, one makes it a 15 question form you have to fill out. But it feels like, hey, I can go to this group with five other my peers, take a look at it. I can hear the questions they ask. I can ask my questions, and then leave it to where it's at when it's done. And I mean, it could be a good
Yeah,
way. I think, yeah.
one thing that I would tag on to that, sorry to cut you off, is that one of my peers explaining that they have a problem and it dawning on me that like, oh, I'm not even thinking about that, was more impactful than someone showing me on the slide telling me I have a problem. Like that problem was buried in six different bullet points, and I'm going, yeah. But when it was phrased the way it was phrased by someone else in the same seat, it was like, ooh, maybe that's something I don't have a good handle on. And so that sort of that got me thinking, just completely different, because it was such a low touch sales approach, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Artie.
And I know we're running a little low on time, so I'm gonna ask one maybe final question, and hopefully we can wrap it up after this. But Graham, what are you thinking about the future of customer success and service? Is there anything on the near horizon that excites you and gets you up out of bed every morning?
I mean, we could go for hours on that. Yeah, I think it's
a small question, Artie.
Yeah, I mean, how much time do you want to have? No, I'm incredibly encouraged by this space. I do feel like and I mentioned this a lot, and I use this term, I need a better one. It's a little bit of a dirty pool of water right now. I think you have a lot of vendors that are trying to fight for attention because it's a hot space. It's the lifeblood of organizations, right? You think about the customer experience, not just the success, which is the operational aspect of it, but the actual experience and setting that vibe for prospects and clients. We're just getting going, right? We're in its infancy. We've gone from account management to customer success You're seeing the rise of a chief customer officer actually owning revenue within organizations. You're starting to see the operation aspect come into play. The customer experience is not just call centers anymore. It's not just being reactive and answering Zendesk tickets. It's really the lifeblood, and organizations that are getting it right, even with mediocre products and services, are taking off, right? Because they're thinking about the journey, they're staying in their lane. So I'm incredibly excited to see where this goes. I think it's going to, personally, guys, you did ask me, I think it's going to, customer success and the services aspect of it is going to be drastically different in the next 5 to 7 years. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's definitely an exciting space to be in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in its infancy, which is cool to see. It's interesting to see the sales cycle change along with the customer experience, customer success. So, Graham, a pleasure having you on the podcast today. I think we really dove deep into that evaluating vendors, and I think all of us have been there. We've all been on both sides of it, and absolutely appreciate your insight and where you see things are going. So, thanks for coming on.
Awesome, guys. Always great to see you. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, Graham, and thanks, Alex, for hosting, and thanks to all the viewers for taking time to watch another Cloud podcast.
All right. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud podcast.